Good. So let's learn how to manage stress. 99% of businesses that are started by business people with no experience in business fail within 3 years. 96% of businesses fail because of poor management. And 46% of businesses fail because they can't make enough sales to survive. Let's face the reality. Nothing happens until you make a sale. It doesn't matter how nice you are and how good your personal branding is if you can't make a sale. So you have to sell to survive. You have to serve a client to survive. You have to solve problems to survive. But what happens is we get into these mental ruts. Now, I told you that I was in pawn for 17 years, and we had a pawnbroking business. And if you've ever been into a pawnbroking business before, the customers that you're lending money to on a daily basis have got themselves into a situation of despair. And oftentimes what's happened is they've gambled, they've drank too much, they haven't managed their money correctly, they've grown up in a family where they never learned how to manage money. They spend everything they have and more. In Australia right now, the average personal expense is about 183% of your income. And people would come in because they'd run out of money, and they'd bring in something of value. They'd bring in a mobile phone, something of value. It's worth $1,000. We would lend them $250. It was a good business. We would hold their item and they would pay us back $250 plus 20% interest per month. So we were lending our own money out at 20%. Great business. But what we did as a family made the difference. See, we went through a royal commission. We were bullied by the police. We were put in front of the courts, and we won every single case against the police department. And we needed to have resilience. But what helped us survive was how we managed our stress. See, when you're customer facing all day, every day, and you're working with desperate people, what happens is it's easy to hate people. It's easy to label people, you this, you that, get out of, you're dirty. But they bought from us, they borrowed money, we had to be nice to them. But your stress levels increase, don't they? And some days, life would be good if it just wasn't for the who? The customer. Remember that on the aircraft? It'd be a great flight if there was no customers here. But without the customers, we couldn't have that job. So what we did as a family was we had a couple of rules. We never labelled people. We never labelled people. And what happens is, if there's no label, what happens is you don't set them up for failure. So what happens when you label somebody, you become the judge, the jury, and the executioner. We also learned to take a lot of time off. And my mum was great. What she'd say is, boys, you need to take time off. You need to go on the road, go on a holiday, and we'll pay you to go away. Take your holidays early and have a rest. And we'll do these mini escapes. How was your mini escape, Vanessa? 3 days out of business. So what you've got to do, you've got to learn to take time off. Each business person around the world is suffering from sleep deprivation. What happens when you get up in the morning? You're checking bank accounts, you're checking emails, and the first thing that happens in your life is often disappointment. Oh, I've lost a customer, I didn't get paid, something's gone wrong. And then what's the last thing you do before you go to bed at night? Same thing. And then you go to sleep and you're thinking about business, not in a positive term, in a negative term. So what happens is you're constantly angry, constantly frustrated, you're constantly feeling sad or depressed or lonely. So you've got to learn to manage your emotions. And we did that really well. And what we did was we built a business by being nice to people. The number one quality, and write this down, of all business people, of all sales people in the world, is the quality of being nice. All you need to do is be nice to your customers. And what will they do? They'll keep being nice to you. All you've got to do is be nice to them. Now, we finished the pawnbroking business in 2007. We closed it down, so it's been closed for 11 years. We walk down the street of Windsor today and people say, oh, it's the Tolsons. Hey, how you doing? And they say, they used to be my pawnbrokers. And they're telling their friends, oh, we used to borrow money from them. They cross the street after 11 years and still say hello. Oh, remember me? We used to borrow money on our kids' PlayStations. We used to tell them to the kids it was getting repaired. Because we were nice people. Would lend the money, would smile, and they kept coming back. And we drove out more than a dozen competitors. Nobody could compete with the Tolson family because we were nice people. Why did we win all the court cases against the police department? Because we were nice people. And the judge looked at us and said, "You are nice people." And he threw the cases out of court. So you just got to be nice. Be nice, be nice, be nice. But you just got to learn to manage your stress. Now, remember this. We'll use another triangle. Everything starts with a thought. And this is emotional intelligence. Everything starts with a thought. Your thoughts produce 95% of your feelings. You don't feel anything by chance. You think by thought. If you have a negative thought, you get stressed. If you think fear, you get stressed. It's the thought that predicts your feelings, not the other way around. Your feelings then determine your actions. What happens when you fear rejection? What happens? Do you ask for the sale? Do you ask the person to purchase your product? Or do you maple leaf and go, would you like to think about it? Yeah. Did I say it okay? You start to doubt yourself. And what happens is you fail to take action. And inaction is a failure to take action. So your thoughts determine your feelings. Your feelings determine the actions you do and don't take. And one of the things that will change your life is that all action and inaction has consequences. By failing to act has consequences. And what happens is your actions determine the quality of your life. So the first thing you have to do, and everything we've done today, is we're changing these thought patterns. I've got to be prepared. If you're prepared and you've researched your customers, do you think you're going to feel confident rather than going in flying blind trying to figure it out yourself? Yeah, all the anxiety disappears. If you're anxious in your sales process, I can guarantee that you haven't prepared. If you feel anxious and you have prepared, it's not anxiousness. The feeling is excitement because you're about to change somebody's life. So prepare, prepare, prepare. It starts with a thought. The thoughts change the feelings. The feelings determine the actions you do and don't take. And then those actions determine the quality of your life.
Is there one more earlier before conditioning and programming?
Mm-hmm.
That big effect on how you think is how you can condition and program?
Yep.
That's still valid?
Yep. It's either by default or design. You either choose your thoughts by design or you get them by default. So the cup noodle, my daughter, Nikita, she's 5.5. And I say to her in the morning, when we go to bed at night, she sleeps with Daddy, I love that. And I say to her, Nikita, what do I have to say before I go to sleep? She says, Dad, you have to say, I believe, and I repeat it, I believe. I said, what next? She says, something wonderful is going to happen to me today. And I say, oh, okay. So I say, I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today. That's by design. I'm choosing my thoughts. I'm not letting my thoughts choose me. And then I say, sweetheart, and where do I say that from? She says, Dad, you got to say it from the heart. And I say, well, what do I do with my head? She says, Dad, say head, go to sleep. So we have to think this through. We have to plan it out and we have to design it the way we want to think. And that'll determine how we feel. If you lose a sale, most salespeople, it's almost immediate depression because they haven't planned how they're going to respond in that moment. One of my clients, I showed him how to think. And I said at the end of every sales presentation, whether you win it or you lose it, you ask yourself 2 questions. Write these down. The first question you ask yourself is, what did I do well? You always do something good. And you write down, what did I do well? But you have to do this within 10 minutes of the presentation. If not, it leaves the conscious mind. So you write down, what did I do well? And you write down everything that you did well. You've got to give yourself a pat on the back. Nobody else is going to give you a pat on the back, by the way. It's just you. And then second question, you've got to ask yourself, what will I do differently next time? What will I do differently next time? And in that moment, you stop all blame. You stop all justification. and you stop any identification with those negative emotions that are present. So the first question is, what did I do well? And be proud of what you do well. I showed up, I smiled, I asked great questions. What will you do differently next time? I won't maple leaf, or whatever it might be. And what happens is you auto-correct immediately. But if you don't do that, then the thoughts run wild. Now there's 7 major forms of stress. How many?
7.
Good, and it all starts with you. And we call this the enemy within. The first area of stress is worry. Now this will blow your mind. A study revealed that 40% of what people worry about never happens. 30% are in the past and you can't change it. 12% are groundless worries about health. 10% about petty worries about unimportant matters. Of the remaining 8%, half are things over which you have no control. And only 4% is you can do something about. So all those things that you worry about, it boils down to 96% you can do nothing about. There's only 4% that you can focus on. So you've got to learn to stop worrying, okay? So how do we stop wondering? We call this the worry buster. First of all, you've got to clearly define your problem in writing. So you have to write it down. You have to clearly define the problem. Secondly, you've got to determine the worst thing that could actually happen. What's the worst thing that could happen if you don't get this sale? Is your life going to end? No. Are you going to lose your house? No. You're not going to, but you have to be certain and you have to be clear about that. And then thirdly, having defined the worst thing that could happen, you have to resolve to accept it. Well, in the event that this does happen, I accept the result in advance. And what happens is all worry removes. Fourthly, having come to peace with the worst, set about doing your best to ensure it will not occur. So what do? You go back and you prepare, and prepare. When I do an emotional quotient assessment, who's done an emotional quotient assessment with me before? Was it a profound experience? Was it like I was looking through glass? Following you around? Psychic spying? Reading your tarot cards? It's profound, isn't it? And because what I do is on our first call, I take detailed notes. Luke and I worked together years ago. 140 pages of notes I took in our coaching session. And that was over 12 hours. 140 pages. I prepared. And then when I did his emotional quotient assessment, I tied all of that into his quotient. So I had been preparing. So you've got to be prepared. So if you think you're going to fail, what you've got to do is go back and prepare again. And all of your worry will disappear. Now, Dr. Carl Simonton, very interesting gentleman. He's determined that 80% of your illness is psychosomatic in nature. What psychosomatic means is it starts in your mind and it makes your body sick. Now, Ken Falconer, one of my clients in the UK, he rang me up and he said, Daniel, I need your help. And I said, what's happening, Ken? He said, I'm about to die. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm going to die. I said, you're going to die? He said, Daniel, I'm going to die at 55. And I said, well, what's the backstory? He said, Daniel, 6-7 years ago, I went bankrupt and I lost everything. And I had to change my name. I had to change where I lived. I lost all my properties. And I've never got over it. And my wife and I finally bought a new home, but we're never going to be able to afford it. He said, the only way that I can afford to buy this house is if I die and we collect the insurance money. And I said, and so what? He said, well, my wife and I have been joking about this, that the only way we're going to own the home is if I die. And what happened was in October last year, he started to have heart problems. He had heart problems, an irregular beat. He went to the doctor. They say, your heart's all out of whack, take this medication. But he's got this thing in his mind that he's going to die at age 55. And he had convinced himself that he was going to die. And his body started to shut down. But what happened was, it was all in his mind. Those thoughts put him into a panic mode. And he had a fear in life that life was going to end. He stopped setting goals. And what happens if you have no goals? You have no purpose. And without a purpose, you perish. There's no reason to live. So you need to have reasons to live. And just one reason is enough to bring you back from the brink of disaster. My mum, she learned NLP with me, and she had been taking heart tablets for years. And the doctors said, you've got all these heart conditions. It was in here. She was stressed about things from the past. Today she told me she has now been off heart medication for about a year. Never taken another one again, after she got rid of all the mental blocks. And after she started to set new purpose and meaning for the second part of her life. So what we have to do is we have to make sure that we have meaning in life. Why do you do what you do? Why are you doing it? Why do you wake up in the morning? What is your purpose? If you're not clear on your purpose, you need to have what's called a major definite purpose. And it changes your life immediately, doesn't it, Sam? You figured out your major definite purpose, what happened?
I started to see different things as well, and there's some jolt of energy which comes through.
A massive jolt of energy.
Moves you forward.
It does. So you have to have meaning in your life. If you don't have meaning, you're going to perish.
I heard it explained, worrying is like prayers for what you don't want.
Yep. You can have anything that you want on this planet, by the way. Did you know that?
Yeah.
You've just got to make a decision what you want. Now, thirdly is the incomplete action. That girlfriend who dumped you and she never told you why, is that still driving you nuts? I wonder why she broke up with me. That boyfriend that you dumped and you didn't tell him why and he's still ringing after 30 years, showing up at all of your events. What happens is we have things that are left incomplete and we don't finish them off. Make sure you're complete. The best thing that you can do is be complete. As humans, we have a compulsion for closure. We must finish things off. And if we don't, it's like a spinning plate. Putting all that energy to keep that plate spinning, but it never goes away. And most people have something unfinished, a relationship, a business. And one of the greatest sources of stress is when you set a goal and you don't achieve it. You open the book and you don't read it. So you've got to make sure that all of your business is finished. Fourthly is the fear of failure. And the major cause of stress is the fear of failure. I've worked with thousands of people over the years, and they are some of the most highly intelligent people I've ever met in my whole life. But one fear of failure was enough to sabotage all of their success. They have fear of failure, and it holds them back. It's like a handbrake on in your life. Have you done that in your car before? You go to drive your car, you put your foot on the accelerator, and you're trying to go forward, and the engine's going, rah, 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 and you think this bloody car's not going anywhere. You look down, and then you've left the handbrake on. One fear is enough to sabotage all of your success. Number 5, the fear of rejection. The fear of rejection is triggered off by hearing the word, rhymes with snow. No. No. So what happens is before you even present to your client, you start thinking about them saying no. And what happens is it fires off the fear of rejection because you think they're going to say no. You build it up inside of yourself. You're thinking they're going to say no, they're going to say no, and all of a sudden the fear of rejection comes in. So at the end of the sales presentation, you say, maybe you should think about it. Here's a brochure. I'll call you tomorrow. But you don't call back. So what happens is the fear of rejection fires off the fight, flight, or freeze response. If you trigger this off in a buyer, they will start to argue with you. Have you had clients arguing with you before? It's often because of fear of rejection. That's why we need to build rapport. Because in rapport, there's no judgment. It also triggers off the flight response. Have you ever had an appointment? Client rocks up and they go, "Oh, I've just had a meeting come up. I'm going to have to leave the conversation early," or they've got to suddenly run away from the meeting. Have you had that before? That's the flight response. They're panicking. They want to run away. We also do it in our own lives. And then thirdly is we have freeze. And what happens is when somebody freezes, including yourself, you can't make decisions. The brain shuts down and you can't make a decision. And business is all about making decisions. And we learned the statistic before from the American Management Association that 70% of the decisions that you make in your life turn out to be wrong. Get over it. It's a fact. What you've got to do is keep making more decisions. Knowing what you now know, make a new decision. The sixth part is denial. Do you know somebody in denial?
Yeah.
Somebody who won't face the world for what it is? They're living in the past, they're living in the future, but they refuse to live in the moment. And they live in a place called denial. It is not a river in Egypt. It's denial. And what happens is if you're in denial, you're not looking at the world. And we call this the reality principle. You have to look at the world for what it is, not the way you wish it could be, should be, or hope it should be. You've got to look at the world for what it is right now and base your decisions on that. And then finally, we have anger. And anger is the most destructive of all negative emotions. Anger calcifies the heart. Anger attacks the gut. But for most of you, you probably think, I'm not an angry person. You don't project anger externally because we can't do that in our culture, can we? You can't just go up and punch somebody in the head. But what can happen, you can dream it. What happens is you play these scenarios inside and you visualize it. And you get angry internally and you get frustrated. And what happens is this robs you of the energy that you need to build your businesses. And this is the major contributor of stress. Stress costs the economy $300 billion per year. It costs you your lifestyle. It costs you sales. It costs you repeat business. It costs you your family. So you have to learn to deal with your emotions effectively. Has anybody had a fear before in their life? Yeah. 43% of business people right now have fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of making a mistake, fear of success. What if I'm successful? Maybe somebody will say something bad about me, or better not be successful. What if I can't handle it? What happened with you in Moulin Rouge? Kylie, years ago, was selected to dance at Moulin Rouge. Who's been to Moulin Rouge in Paris before? Only the best dancers in the world. I've been there. Kylie was selected for Moulin Rouge. And what happened because of a fear?
I ran over by 2 trucks on my way home from negotiating the contract to break my neck and back, crushed my brain.
Psychosomatic. The mind making the body sick. Nothing happens by chance. You think these things, you attract it into your life. So, big learnings. If you can create that, you can create anything that you want. So you have to be mindful of your emotions. So let's figure out these emotions. On the following page, we have an application exercise. And I want you to leave being a stress-free personality. The number one quality that we're all looking for in our life, we might use a different word, but it's peace of mind. Do you want to go to bed? Happy. Do you want to wake up? Happy. Do you want to spend time with your children, thinking about the time with your children, not with problems inside of relationships or business? This is peace of mind. And this is what everybody's actually moving towards. If you achieve peace of mind, everything in life will take care of itself. So what I want you to do is I want you to think through this now. And you're going to be a consultant. And you're going to ask the partner next to you some very tough questions. The first one is, what is the greatest source of worry in your life right now? You have to write it down. Number 2, what is the worst thing that could happen if this worry actually materialized? You're doing your worry buster. What actions can you take to ensure this will not happen? If you do that and you eliminated the major stress in your life today, would this be one of the most important events that you've been to? Good, make it happen. B, lack of meaning. Revisit the section on purpose, which we didn't do, but just ask the person, what purpose? Why are you doing what you're doing? I do my business because I get to travel the world. I love to travel. It's important to me. That's why I was cabin crew. I get to work with lovely people like yourself, and it gives my family a lifestyle that I could have never have had as cabin crew. As cabin crew, I couldn't take my kids on a layover, but now I can bring my family to work with me, and that's more important to me than anything else. What actions can you take to bring your life and your business into alignment with this purpose? Section C, what is the most pressing task or job remaining you have left uncompleted? Which clients haven't you called back? That's a source of stress. Why have you not completed it? And make sure you hold your partner's feet to the fire. Make sure they don't run away. People, you'll ask these questions, they'll want to run away. I've got to go to the bathroom. I've got a flight to catch. Make sure they stay and answer the questions, because it'll be the biggest favour you can do for them in their life. Fear of failure. What is the most significant undertaking you have not tackled because you were afraid you might fail? How much are you earning now? How much would you like to earn? There's a gap, isn't there? And that gap is the action that you haven't taken yet. What's the worst thing that could happen? I know people who have built 6, 7, 8-figure businesses on a 3-letter word called ask. They went and asked somebody, can I solve this problem? They said, absolutely, we'd love you to. And they've become multi-millionaires. So much money it should be illegal. Fear of rejection. Whose approval do you seek? Let me tell you a story. A client of mine, Simon, he came to an event in the UK and he said, Daniel, I just want to make my dad happy. I want my father to be proud of me. And I looked at him, I said, how old are you? He said, mid-50s. And I said, and you still want to make your father proud? He goes, yeah, I want to show my dad that I'm a success and I want him to be proud of me. I said, good for you, Simon. I said, just out of curiosity, what will your father say when you achieve this goal? Yeah, he won't say anything. It's like, what? And he said he won't say anything. Why not? And he goes, oh, my dad died 10 years ago. So whose approval are you still trying to seek? Is it an ex-girlfriend? Is it an ex-lover? What is the worst thing that might happen if you failed to win their approval? And what actions can you take to overcome this? Denial. Remember, it's not a river in Egypt. What is the most significant component or element of your life that you prefer not to acknowledge? I had a client recently and I said, you want to lose weight? And she said, yes. And I said, how much do you weigh? Oh, we don't have scales in our house. And I said, well, how do you know how much you weigh? I don't know. I don't want to know. I just want to lose weight. I said, well, you need to get some scales. No, not getting on the scales. It's only a small amount of denial, isn't it? But she can't succeed until she knows her numbers. You have to have an accurate starting point. What's the worst thing that might happen if you acknowledge this? Anger. Describe a situation where you lost control and reacted in anger. What part did you play in creating this situation? And what actions could you have taken to respond differently? So what you have to do is you have to pre-program this into your mind, because it's going to happen one day when you're going to get angry, correct? Your kids are going to piss you off. Your dog's going to shit on the floor and you tread on it in the middle of the night. My bloody French bulldog does that. But what I've learned is the dog didn't shit there to piss me off. The dog just does what the dog does. It's nothing personal, but I'd always take it personal. I was wearing a lovely suit and the dog attacked me. I was telling Charlie about this and I consulted Charlie and cried on her shoulder. And the dog attacked me. And my wife said, why did the dog attack you? I said, the dog's stupid. We've got to get rid of it. She said, you're wearing your suit. Why would it attack you wearing your suit? I said, I've got no idea. And my wife, being my wife, and she asked great questions, she said, well, what's your suit made out of? I said, what do you mean? She said, what's your suit made out of? I said, it's a woolen suit. I just paid $2,000 for it. She says, the dog probably thought you were a sheep. So what part did you play in creating this situation? Now name a person who you resent, against whom you hold a grudge, towards whom you feel angry. Get clarity on that. And what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to spend a good 15 minutes each and really help your partners through here. You can leave today being a totally stress-free personality. Your life will change, you'll double your income, and people want to do business with you. So 15 minutes apiece, that'll bring us right up to 4 o'clock. Enjoy the exercise and hold their feet to the fire. Hold their feet to the fire. Okay, how's that exercise going? You're enjoying it? Need a couple more minutes? Yep. What we'll do as you're doing that exercise, just as you wrap it up, we're going to get you out of here at 4 o'clock. So we'll go for a couple of more minutes. Have you enjoyed yourself? Yes. Good, excellent. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. And I asked my daughter to translate that for me one day, and she said, "Daddy, milk is the breakfast of champions." So whilst we're wrapping this up, if I could ask you to share some feedback, and I want you to be honest with me, and I want you to put your thoughts down on paper, because what you'll help me do is grow and get better, and we can all improve. So Luke's going to pass out some feedback forms. If I could just ask you to take a few moments to leave some feedback for me to help me grow my business, and I'd really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And then what we'll do, just a couple of minutes to 4, we'll wrap it up, and we'll get all of these good looking people on the way.